Hello, welcome back to another episode of A Little Atypical. My name is Alayjah, you can call me Lay, and as I'm recording this, it is actually Memorial Weekend, the unofficial start of summer, so I thought no better time would be to start listing out summer intentions, ins and outs, just of course doing a mid-year review because we're gonna be in June soon. Is the perfect time to do a deep dive, a full-on check-in with yourselves. One thing that I'm working on, I'm going to be creating a mid-year review for the show notes because what I've been doing is trying to catch up and develop show notes for each of my old episodes. So far, 3 is up, up to episode 3 is on my blog, and there's bonus content underneath the show notes. With the newer ones that I'm starting now, I already have a template set up for them. Something I really want to do is finish up putting on the show notes for the old episodes so I can catch up to the episode that I'm on. So then I would do the podcast on Mondays and then do show notes on Tuesdays, and then hopefully continue posting wellness content or other forms of blogging content because I really want to get back into blogging the way I used to. I never realized how much that influenced my life, being able to blog, so I just want to get the podcast system down so I can go back to blogging and then also see how I want to adapt my YouTube channel, how it fits in with these different forms of content. Honestly, let's just get into the episode. So this is going to be a more casual conversational type episode. Just for a point, I've been re-listening to all of my old podcast episodes because of the show notes, and I used to sound so nervous, so I'm actually really happy that now that I'm about 25 episodes in, I've been posting consistently, I would say, since episode 8. Anyways, so since I am doing a very specific type of check-in, I'm doing a mix of the 12-week year, but I'm also using the moon phases to help me keep track of my goals, because the reason why I didn't feel that connected with doing the 12-week year is I need more of an emotional connection. So I've gotten better at checking in on my goals and myself after I finished Lunar Living, which I'm pretty sure I finished it March, even though I started it in February, but I was in such a bad headspace throughout February. So then when March came around, I was really delving deeper into my check-in systems, which is so important. So recently, if you follow astrology, May 21st, I believe, was the start of Gemini season. The 23rd, in terms of moon phases, was a full moon. It was full moon in Sagittarius. What that sign does, so I did my entire full moon reflection. It has very specific questions regarding to the sign, so Sagittarius, which is a sign in astrology that represents freedom and philosophy, and that is what the energy is around. I only set about 3 intentions to keep it simple. I'm gonna start here. My first intention for the summer is socializing. I don't know if it's just the Gemini energy because, that sign is all about chatting, socializing, and whatnot. That's what it actually means in astrology, because I know people tend to hate on Geminis. I don't know. I feel like I never necessarily hate a sign, but there has been instances where people made me dislike a sign, but I try not to fixate it on all signs. Funny story, so my nephew was born, right? And there's a reason why this story is funny. My nephew was born the same day as an ex-friend that made me very much dislike Aries men. I felt like having my nephew born the exact same day was assigned to heal my relationship with the signs because every sign does have its value. So going forward, my first intention is socializing because I notice it's something that is genuinely hard for me. It is my biggest challenge in life because I know with human behavior, a lot of people say, like, oh, it's natural for humans want to socialize. But if you're someone like me, where you just kind of like being in your own space, because growing up, I thought it was more social anxiety, and it was because of my environment. But once I got to college, I did genuinely like talking to people, but I just didn't like going out to talk to people, you know? And because I'm a naturally more introverted person, I feel like I get very drained talking to people. And it's more like, I think sometimes I come off as very like uptight, standoffish, because it's not that I don't like people. I feel like I can genuinely talk to anyone about anything. When I went to the book event with my friends and we kind of had like a social aspect of it where you kind of talk and meet different people that you don't know who also read the author. But the ironic part of the time is that was the only book I was getting from the author. So I didn't know anything from her other books because I didn't read from her yet. That was literally my first book. And honestly, I kind of want to get more books from her, but that's besides the point. When we were doing it, my friend was like panicking. She's like, I do not want to talk to new people. And I was like, kind of fine with it. Like, I was actually kind of happy to talk to new people because the thing is, I'm just a very blunt person. I was literally anyone I got paired with, I was like, yeah, this is my gonna be my first book from her. I know nothing, but I was still able like to talk to them about anything else. So I remember one person I was talking to was wearing this star shirt and it's like kind of space themed, and I was like also wearing like something like kind of space themed. And then I was like, oh, what brought you here today? And she was saying how she was looking for a cookbook and then just hopped on into the event. And I was like, ah, so what were you trying to cook? And then she was saying how she was trying to bake something from scratch. And then my friend jumped in because my friend was like also next to me because it was kind of like a two-way line. During the event, I was saying like, oh, how I never baked anything from scratch. And then I was saying my friend did though. She made like lemon cupcakes from scratch and it was really good. And it was actually for our other friend who was also with us birthday. So, yeah. I mean, I feel like I can talk about anything or relate to people and it's not as terrifying to talk to new people. But for me, something is very that's for me something that's very hard is like bringing myself to talk to people after or talking to people while I'm very like, I guess, about my goals is the best way to put it. I have been struggling with actual socialization, and I it's like that thing that will improve your life. There's some types of socialization that's still very hard for me. So specifically in the professional sense. So networking. And I've been trying to change my mindset around networking because for me it always felt like very like opportunist. But then I'm trying to change my mindset around the concept of networking. Okay, and it stems from when I was reading this book. It's called Design Your Life, and a huge section of it was talking about how you need to kind of like get curious about the life you want and do things like life interviews, which I knew about while I was in college because FIT really encouraged their students to, even on our first day, the first thing they told us to do was make a LinkedIn, right? So they pretty much encouraged networking, connecting with people, because especially when you want to go in an industry that's really creative, that's something you really have to do. I feel like creative people, you either get that they're very extroverted and out there, or they're very introverted. Like, it's just such different extremes. Like, I don't think there's many that's like ambiverts or like directly in the middle. And that's just been my experience. But I guess there could be more artists and creatives that are more ambiverts. But I digress on that one. I'm going to talk about this deeper in the end. So, about how I view my life. But I do think doing more socializing would benefit my life the most. On that scale, I also was really thinking about doing volunteer work because since I am home right now, it just feels like something I want to do, but I don't know really where I want to start with volunteering, you know? Because I have had experience with community service. We done it a few times in high school. Some things I did was like more nature orientated, but then sometimes I also did help out at my local library, and I found that very fun. It was like very chill. I didn't really talk to people, but it was just like organizing the books and like helping them out, like put back return books and stuff like that for community service. And honestly, it was a vibe, it was chill, and I think that's why I enjoyed it. And then I was looking into like, oh, if you could still do that, volunteer. And the one that I usually go to did not have like openings or anything like listed for volunteering. But I guess one that's like not super far has like this opportunity, and it's like to help serve lunches and stuff, which is something I actually did a lot, even as like my first job, and even like my last more recent job. I went to help out at their event for students in the summer, and part of it was like helping with food, and I don't know, usually I do tend to help with that, and usually with jobs I help out in like in a setting with people younger than me, but sometimes it does make me like more nervous to help out because I feel like with people younger than you, you always have to try to keep your patience more. And I really try to, I guess, be really calm and patient. But being calm and patient does take a good amount of practice. And I have gotten better with it. But also with kids, you have to be okay with being like more stern, more bossy. And maybe it's a younger sibling thing. You know, like I feel like with older siblings, they're better at like if someone is doing something irresponsible, like being more like stern but getting them to listen. As a younger sibling, that is something like I was not equipped for, and I do get more practice with it now that I have like a niece and a nephew that's like more new to the world. The second thing I want to do more of is resetting. So this has more to do. I'm so sorry if you can hear a dog barking in the background. The walls be very thin. But anyways, so resetting, getting organized, because okay, as I mentioned, I want to socialize more. And if I want to do that, networking, volunteering, and just honestly talking. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention was getting back to social media, but I'll get into that with my ins and outs. With resetting, I want to have very good organizational systems because I've been doing that as I mentioned with the show notes. Getting organized is probably the most effective thing I can do with when I want to enter like new things and new people into my life and more make more space for others to be of service with others and stuff like that. Working with the show notes is one way, but in general, some things I want to do is clear out my emails. my friends and my mom get so annoyed with this because you know how sometimes you just kind of get a bunch of emails? Some people delete them right away. I kind of open it and leave it, and then I forget to delete it. So my mailbox has like maybe 20,000, 30,000 emails because I don't really delete them. It's not that good of a system. And then on top of that, there are still papers I want to get rid of from school. I want to look through my products, get rid of the expired products. The hardest thing for me to do is do a makeup declutter. I'm pretty sure the majority of my makeup should be thrown out. And there's maybe like only one palette I feel like, okay, definitely use. But there are so many palettes that I have, and the thing is, they're so pretty. I just can't get rid of them. Like, I don't want to use them, but I can't get rid of them, which is so bad. So I just need to figure out how to declutter and get rid of things, and kind of doing more so a space reset. And I mean both in the physical sense and the digital sense of just creating space, you know? I feel like it would make my life better. Third intention of the summer, health. Again, I'm going to go in deeper into what's been happening with my health towards the end. But specifically, one thing I really want to do this summer is I want to do a no sugar challenge, but I don't want to do it raw. Because I know when I do things like that, because back in January when I was trying to be on my discipline era, doing things cold turkey for me just doesn't help me. It makes me spiral more. After January, I got really into a state of burnout. Throughout February, I was really burnt out. And March for me was like, okay, reevaluating, making things work. And I felt so much better in March. April was probably my best month so far. May has been pretty good too. Not terrible, but just very calm, kind of like still. I think it's because in April that I was working towards designing things, I was socializing more and going out a bit more and making time for that. When it comes to fitness, after February, so March, April, it was actually so much easier for me to work out for an hour 3 times a week, because I preferred it. And then after that, I slowly started to like add in evening exercise. And now I'm trying to get to a point of doing 45 minutes daily of some form of movement, whether it's low impact, whether it's more aerobics, just as long as I'm moving. That is the goal, to start off my day. And it feels great to start off my day with movement, strength training, dancing. Rebound is like when you use like a trampoline. It's actually really fun, so it doesn't feel like an exercise. Hula hooping. I want to get back into jump roping since it is getting warmer, and that's why through the winter I started practicing like jumping more again using the trampoline. It's really important for me to just slowly go into my goals. It's so I don't get burned out with them. I don't become scattered in the pursuit and then start to resent them and then start to resent myself. It gets to a very weird cycle. So the plan is August to have like a week or two no sugar challenge. So slowly waning off. I already waned off my protein coffees that was constantly in the few lifestyle YouTube videos I did. I waned off of that. I still occasionally have the chai, sometimes a cappuccino when I don't have chais, but then some days I do 2 cups of caffeine and it's so bad. I try not to do that often, but it really depends on the day. I think lately the most I've been having is 1. On to the ins and outs. I can already tell this episode is probably going to be one of my longer ones. I was thinking about this. It kind of relates to the intentions, but I'll do all of my ins first and then I'll get to my outs. My first in is jewelry making. For the Taurus new moon, I had to choose a self-care activity, and I used my astrology self-care book. And for Taurus, it was like try jewelry making. I was like, okay, I'll try that for Taurus season. ended up being pretty decent at it. So I only got like a small set. I already just ordered a new set so that I can make more patterns and designs. And I'm really excited for it when it comes because it's just been energizing me. I know like it's something people do growing up, like making little crafts like bracelets and stuff like that. But when I was younger, I was very afraid of doing hands-on things, jewelry making, like making pottery. I was afraid to mess up, even in like science classes. I actually really like chemistry, but throughout school, even college, I was so afraid of lab classes because I was afraid to break something and mess up. Doing it kind of felt like I could do more hands-on things because I always had this limiting belief that I couldn't. So being able to take the time to do something hands-on, it just feels like I'm honoring my inner child and feels like I'm evolving, and a sign I'm evolving. The second thing is friend dates. I already just committed to meeting my friend in June. I mean, I didn't see a friend all throughout May. I really just want to get out. Adding on to that is finding my something larger. So when I was reading Burnout, I think I was reading that in March. The book Burnout was very inspirational in this sense. And even from then, I was always thinking about what is my something larger, because there's so much things in the world. And especially with everything that's going on right now, it's always like in my head, like, what do I want my something larger to be? And I think in college, I was introduced the most to, I guess, different ideas. I took comparative political systems, and that class was very eye-opening. We watched a lot of documentaries for our assignments and had to do essays on them. I could never watch the documentaries alone, so I had my boyfriend at the time watch them with me. And for me personally, I would rather read about it because I'm a person who struggles with the visuals. But I also think the visuals are very important because they're more impactful. And with literature and reading, you have to be careful because there's always going to be like things like bias. And it's also like first person account, second person account. And we learned that in history about how there are different accounts and different types of, I guess, research. So there's that. And like I was saying, I want to volunteer and do something and figuring out the most meaningful things to me, you know? Because I do feel like being home and in the kind of air I am, it's very easy to hyper fixate on aspects of myself. It's very easy to fixate on not feeling like I'm not where I want to be in life. And I'll get that with the next out. But when you know there's something larger and you're contributing to that, I feel like it's just such an energizing thing. And with wellness, we don't really talk about those type of things, like finding your thing. Even a book I was reading, I think it was I Am That Girl. And one of the things that I did like about the book is she does talk about finding your purpose and finding like something to do that's just bigger than you. And I do love when books mention it, people mention it, because always thought this was very funny. Like I remember, I forgot where I saw this, but it was like someone saying is the world Earth is the world's largest group project. I always found that so funny and it really stuck with me. I don't even remember where I heard it from. I'm pretty sure it was because of TikTok. But besides that point, I think having like you're something bigger other than you, other than the family you may want or the family you have that you really care about, and like having something that's less personal. I feel like there has to be a balance, and having a cause. I do think about like some causes that really fascinate me specifically is education, mental health. I do have interest in, like, obviously, I took a class called Comparative Political Systems. Like, if I had the time, I probably would have added that as one of my minors. But since I was already 4 minors and in between them, and I already had like a very specific plan, I really could not add another minor. But if I could have, I probably would have done it. I always think about like, what do I want? I'm going to be honest for a second. I love money. Like, I need to, in a sense, but not because I'm materialistic, but because I understand the concept that money does add freedom to your life. Sometimes I think about it though, like what I would do with it to get comfortable with the idea of earning money. Because even a book I was recently listening to was saying how they use this as an example that if you make less money than you're used to, or have less money in your account than you're used to, that's when you start to panic and try to work hard to get back to the point. But then when you have excess money, because you're not comfortable with it, you, I guess, subconsciously just spend and spend and spend, and then you're back to like the point where you're used to. So it's just so interesting to think about, like, okay, if I had the money, what would I actually do with it? Self-care is so important, but we can't erase having a larger purpose at the same time. That I feel like when we don't have something other than just us in our goals, that's when it kind of, you lose motivation easily. Have you ever just been doing something and then you just be like, why am I even doing this? I don't care enough about this. But I feel like having a purpose, having like something that sets you on fire, keeps you going even through doing it, even if it gets like hard, difficult, annoying, that something about it is rewarding because you're contributing to something. That's just a little rant. That was my last in for the summer. And my outs. Obviously, this is like more based on the intentions. So, being disorganized, since I have been getting into the show notes, I feel like my physical space has been just not up to my standard, and my physical space has been making me very anxious. So, I want to work on that deeply, to do a reset, because even throughout the time, I would like to call my recovery era, because I don't think necessarily healing is the right word. So I really want to get organized, because this has been the worst my space has looked since, I would say, February. Okay, so next out, not romanticizing life enough. When looking through my old content, I realized I used to romanticize life a little more with social media. I feel like you're on the side of, you either really hate social media or you love it, or you get too obsessed with it. With social media, it's kind of a weird thing. I think that we weren't equipped for social media as much as we should have been. It's about how people use it, right? I think social media itself is a tool and could be neutral, but because of the different ways people use it, it's kind of hard to kind of pinpoint it as good or bad. It's literally just a tool, you know? Like, for example, it's like a hammer to me, you know? What does a hammer do? It helps you fix things, right? But a hammer used the wrong way can break someone's jaw. And I'm not promoting violence. I'm just saying, I know that it's a controversial take for me to say this, But maybe because I was mostly reading the influencer book, so now I kind of get like the behind the scenes and the prospects of using social media as in a form of business. Being a former, I guess, more business student, it does suck, but business, you kind of have to, in a sense, thread carefully. That you have to be very careful with the things you say, careful with the things you promote. Like sometimes people do push it. And the reason why, because publicity. But they know like even if like people hate what they put out, that their community rides hard for them. So that's why you see like the statement, all publicity is quote unquote good publicity, right? And I'm just saying that in a sense. But social media, when you use it as a business, like that's how you make your money. That's basically your job. It's understandable how people, I guess, tiptoe carefully on it. Because how I think of influencers now after reading that book is I kind of see them as like a agency, is the best way to put it. So, one thing we talk about in business is like, would you want to work on the brand side or would you want to work in an agency? The difference between a brand and an agency is a brand is something very specific. There are specific patterns for it. Their specific audience. I think it's very straightforward when you work for a brand. But then when you work for an agency, you kind of get a mixture of things. So when you're starting out, it's probably like better to try out the agency side to see what you like doing, what you like or feel the most, I guess, in tune with working with. But yeah, doing it for a job does bring this weird case because it's literally how people make their livelihoods. But I do think you need to understand what to accept and what to reject at the same time. And morals does come into play, but it's like this very weird gray area. And I do realize that. And then when you use social media for other things, like for example, if you use social media to just solely express your interest, like, or you show it to just like, I guess, capture the memories and where you're at with your life, or even to hold you accountable. Social media is used for just so many things. And I guess for me, it was always like a capsule of seeing how my life was developing. But I haven't used Instagram in maybe 2 years because when you're not where you want to be, I think you get in your head a lot. And it's like, okay, I'm home and I do want to do the social media thing. If I post too much, do I just look like I don't have a life? Or, you know, my own limiting beliefs in my head about, even though this is exactly what I want to be doing. And it's not like I do nothing. And it does, I don't know. I feel like I don't know how to explain this topic. Yeah, I just want to romanticize life a bit more. Like, I want to have blog posts, like, with my playlist of the month and about what shows I watched, my happiness levels, like, stuff like that, the little things, you know? So maybe I can just even look back at it and just, like, remember what I was doing in that time if I'm really so happy, or what was going on at the time of what I can take out of my life in the future, or how I dealt with it, or how I got over something. I think romanticizing your life is not always about like the delulu. Like, I think it's also about seeing growth. Okay, so the third out is getting rid of negativity, specifically guilt and shame about where I'm at, even though I know that's strange to just like say after jumping into the conversation. But Okay, so I did a Moonology card pull, and one of the cards was like the waning moon card, which says like what do you need to release, and then the other card, my very last card, it got Scorpio and full moon. So I think that card was I'm pretty sure that card was about like saying basically you need to release negativity. So it basically answered the question. When I like had deep thoughts about it, because I was starting to go down a doubt spiral about life and kind of worrying about, I don't know where life is going. I don't know how to pursue the dreams I want, but I also don't know how to create the security. And I was getting into a very spirally headspace because I was feeling really good end of March and throughout April because I just made like my 5 year plan. I zoomed in on focused on what I want to focus on this year. And then it was just like, I don't know if I'm even growing, or developing my life. And then that's the thing about progress. It happens so slow. And I do think the issue is we are so conditioned for instant gratification because we have so much access to other people. It's like you see them living your dream. You can either have two responses of either it being like you either wonder how they're doing it, if the issue is you, if you're not doing enough to live your dreams or contribute to them. I got into a very negative spiral of wondering if I'm really cut out for what I want. But then every single time I keep getting signs not to quit. Also understanding like this is the happiest I've felt in forever. So it's like this weird limbo of not seeing, I guess, the fruits grow fast enough or seeing anything progress in this season, getting worried about what happens if I don't put more effort because I have been submitting applications and I think a lot of postgrads understand this that when you're submitting but then you're not hearing back and it's just like am I the problem, am I not doing enough, how do I even build my credibility as a professional if I'm not even getting a chance to like try things or even figure out what do I even want to do. And I think that's how people end up unemployed, underemployed, and it just feels like a frustrating process of constantly having to prove yourself. So I'm trying to get out of that headspace this summer of trying to prove myself, I guess. And that's why I want to find my something larger. Maybe if I had something larger to contribute to, that I wouldn't really be questioning myself as much. I don't know if that makes sense, but certain things I'm not gonna explain. Like, this is why I knew I wanted to do this as a podcast episode instead of like a life update video because I tried to film it and every time I just felt like, I don't know, I wanted to cry. But, anyways, so I am gonna have one more out, which is not working with myself. I feel like I do try to put myself in a box. I try to do things what everyone says works, everyone says it's right. And sometimes I do things that just aren't right for me. I feel like the faster I can figure out like my systems, my way of working with myself, that I'd feel a lot happier, a lot more productive, and feeling more encouraged. Okay, so those were our ins and outs. Last segment, just honestly, I'm just gonna wrap it up by summarizing what's been going on, just a little life update. So, if you follow my YouTube channel, you knew like starting from November, I was kind of taking the time. I was dealing with PCOS, which the type I have, I do think is specifically Adderall fatigue. And with that one, you get like very low energy crashing. Like I would be working. My head would start to spin. I would feel a migraine coming on like the words would like cross over each other. I never knew if it was like PCOS. And then sometimes I would be doing my work and the next thing I know, I'm like passed out over. Didn't know if it was PCOS, if it was I wasn't getting the right nutrients, if I wasn't getting enough sleep. And then on top of that, my perception of myself was just lowering. Because I did appreciate getting that job, but I quickly learned it wasn't right for me because I feel like a good job for me are ones that I can continuously brainstorm and have ideas and I don't know. And I need more intellectual stimulation. Like, there are some people who are just really, really, really good at talking to a bunch of people. Being an assistant, having to navigate different people, schedule, updating, making sure everything goes right. There are some people so great at that skill set. And there's some aspects of it I could be decent at, but I just found it so repetitive. It wasn't stimulating. And even when I do tasks, like building my systems out, and it gets like repetitive, it's hard for me to keep going at it. So I need some things that are new, exciting, and stimulating for my brain. I was feeling at the time that I just wasn't efficient enough. I was upset with myself. I was upset with not doing more, and I was upset because I was burnt out. I was burnt out. My eyes were constantly burning. My head was always hurting, always having migraines, always passing out, not feeling like an effective. Like, I was actually questioning, like, how am I even human at this point? Like, it seemed like everyone else could just get through the day, and I was struggling to get through the day. And it's not that I didn't want to do stuff. It wasn't a thing like I want to do nothing. I don't know. I don't even think I'm a person who is okay with doing nothing. I was also struggling with taking care of my health, doing my content creation, and just finally not putting myself on the back burner. So then after the contract was up, I was just like, you know what? I need to go into recovery mode. I want to have my health in check, because another thing is, if I'm not at my point of confidence, like if I don't feel good in my skin, it's very hard to show up. And I don't mean that in a shallow way, but I judge myself harder. And if I want to get more done, I can't be in that headspace. I can't do that. Throughout the time, January was discipline era. I was trying to be on top of it. I quickly burnt myself out. So when I say my first year of the 12-week year was not the best, but I really made March felt like a turnaround for me, which it was perfect timing because, spring equinox was pretty much March. But now we're so quickly heading into summer, and I want a job. I think a good job for me would be something that's like strategic and analytical. Figuring out how to even get into that space, especially with my degree is very specific, even though I also have one in advertising and marketing's communication as an associate degree. It's just so daunting trying to figure out where to start, because I feel like this is the most confusing time of my life. Throughout school, like growing up, you always have like a clear path. When I was in elementary school, I knew middle school was next. When I was in middle school, I knew high school was next. When I was in high school, I knew college was the thing for me. And now after college, and when you feel like the only thing you're good at is being a student because you have like this natural curiosity, love for learning, and then all of a sudden it's just like, okay, you're out in the world. And then people constantly tell you that life is no longer like being a student. But then why did you train us our entire lives to then expect us to just adjust to the adulthood structure? It's just, I guess, a point of frustration for me and a point of confusion for me. And I just feel like I'm trying to get to a point of feeling like an adult. And with as my mid-year check-in, like I'm happier that I've been in years, but at the same time I'm still not, in a sense, feeling, I guess, secure in my life, because it's hard to feel secure without financials, you know? I feel like of all personal development things, finance and health are the things that you need in order the most to really feel like your life is together. So when your first source of income is not secure, it's like, how do I get to that point to make it secure? So that is pretty much why I want to get into the aspect of socializing and trying to build out my network. But even as in my personal life, maintaining communication is just not easy for me. Sometimes, on the sense, I feel like annoying. Sometimes I do think it's hard because it's like, as someone who is very new to the industry and like the industries I want to get into, it's more like I don't have any incentive for you to want to help me, and I don't know how I can offer you anything in return. And that's another thing. I grew up with someone very stubborn in the best way possible. I love my mom, but she has such trouble asking for help. She's also very headstrong and likes doing things her way. I do think I'm definitely my mother's daughter in that way. So I don't like asking for help. I don't know, because I feel like I owe them. And it's not easy for me to receive help either. And it's not easy for me to, because then if they do help me and I don't do as good of a job, or what if I don't do as good a job, it reflects badly on them, and I don't want it to, especially when someone goes out of your way to help you. So I feel like I had to get my health in order so I don't let people down, and that includes myself, you know? But it's just been confusing, but I feel the happiest making content. And I feel like I have to develop a good system for this, because it's the only thing that brings me a sense of security. It feels like my purpose. I do think creating is a huge part of that, because it's something I'm deeply passionate about. Like everything I make, I spend so much time researching. It is something very important to me. It just always felt right. But I'm going to end off here because this is the longest I've been talking. My voice is fried, y'all. It's already at an hour and 6 minutes. So I'm going to get to the card pull. I used the Starseed Oracle deck this time. This is for the collective. It says, I remember. Soul plan, the fated life versus the destiny life. There was a moment before you were born when you chose the conditions of the life you're living right now. When you plotted out these exact moments along the timeline of your life. We live in a world of free will, and therefore these moments become our destiny only through saying yes. The fated life is the one we were born into. The destiny life is the one your soul chooses, and it takes courage and faith. If you pull this card, it's because you're likely now face to face with the choice to follow the destiny life over the fated life, to trust the path your soul is calling you toward, and to remember that this moment was prearranged on your life's timeline. You may find yourself at a crossroad, at a moment when you're being called to make a decision, to keep walking the perfectly laid out path before you, or to choose the one less traveled. You may be facing a change of career, a new relationship, a difficult decision, or something else that requires courage and faith. You're being invited to remember your soul's greater plan and to surrender to it. When you're confronted with a path that's undefined, it's normal for doubt to rear its head. In fact, this is a certain sign that you're facing your soul's greater plan. Every hero in his or her life journey comes eye to eye with doubt. The only way around it is through it. It's all part of the larger plan. Starseed Soul Inquiry. What are you being called to do to surrender to your soul's plan? So that was our card pull. I guess it does feel aligned with this episode, even though this episode was more about my personal summer intentions, my personal ins and outs, and where I'm at in life. I feel like many people feel like in crossroads, in a transition stage. That's pretty common, especially with it being graduation season. And whenever it's graduation season, I feel like that's when people are at like this weird crossroad. And especially when you're graduating from like high school, college, it's always like this excitement of where you want to go next, or like you just feel like something's new. And even post-grad, and even someone like me who's been out of college for about a year, but then I feel like my life restarted like 6 months ago. So like in November, when I decided to take content more seriously, do contributing my time to more of the things I love and stop making excuses about that, knowing very well it's what fulfills me. But also wanting to have something new come into my life. If you relate, I hope you find your thing, and I hope the stagnancy wears off. Just know we're in the same boat. Anyways, last thing, what I'm grateful for. I feel like I say a lot of the same things, but I am very grateful for my mom because she encourages me to follow my mind. And even though I am doing something a lot less traveled and a lot unheard of, she doesn't make me feel stupid about it. She always tells me how smart I am. And even when I start to not feel that way, I feel like she reminds me that I have something good about me, and I talk about it a lot. I even dedicated a whole blog post about it. I'm also really grateful. I just feel very connected right now to my spiritual side, and I don't know, I'm just very happy to feel more in tune with my emotions than I've ever been. So there's that. I'm thankful for books. I guess there's so much things I'm actually really grateful for. So those are just a few things. I know usually I say one, but I really just couldn't choose one thing. I think I have so much to be grateful for. When you're able to be grateful for the little things, the small things, and the things you have in the present moment, I just feel like you can be grateful for when bigger happens, and you have to believe something more will happen. Things you can't see at the moment, things that are formulating at the moment. So whenever you're listening to this, have a good day, evening, or night. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Okay, remember, there will be show notes. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and specifically because I do want to get back on social media, but I just am getting there, building up the mental capacity to go back on Instagram. So be a real one, subscribe, check out the show notes when it comes out, and yeah. Okay, bye.